30 minutes.
Thanks so much. So first of all, I want to start my presentation showing you a video, a short part of this video. Es más importante mío. Tener la casa. Yo ya lo quiero hacer.
Ya han notado el piso nuevo.
Como la referencia, salir de la provincia.
Ay, yo todavía tengo la misma madera. Mire, nos vemos más jóvenes. Pero uno es más viejo, pero bueno. Sería más como 8.
Ah, sí, porque ya la hija no se va a rumbear, ¿no? No nos desvela mucho.
No, yo me veo mejor ahorita. Ya me confundí. So, given the short time I have, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to start the presentation, but we have kind of, this just to give you a sense of type of things that happen to families that we're following through our family survey. So this is a presentation of the Colombian Longitudinal Survey called ELCA. And this is a project started done by the University of Los Andes with some financial support of the government and some foundations. So first of all, to understand the context that we're going to look at and the type of families that we're going to look at in Colombia, I want to show you the similarities in terms of poverty and inequality in Colombia with respect to the rest of Latin America. So as you can see here, poverty, we are kind of in the same, similar poverty to Latin America, but inequality in Colombia is much higher than in the average countries in Latin America. So this is a key factor that you're gonna be able to see throughout the numbers that I'm gonna show you. Some additional peculiarities of Colombia: we have the longest running armed conflict in the world, and then therefore we're gonna have high levels of violence and conflict and crime that are affecting the families that we're gonna be looking at. There's larger vulnerability due to climate change in the inequalities that they are and the kind of bad housing conditions that some households have. There's high informality in the labor markets, and this is common throughout Latin America, but we have more than 50% of informality in Colombia. And there are big regional inequalities and great difference between development of big cities and rural areas. So we're going to look at ELCA in 2010 and 2013. The baseline was in 2010. We have done the first follow-up in 2013, and we're going to be doing the second follow-up in 2016. So what is the main objective of ELCA? We want to understand the economic and social changes that people and households experience in rural and urban areas. I'm going to tell you about the representativeness of these two areas. And we want to understand the factors that are influencing households' vulnerability, risk management, and the strategies that they are using to cope with these shocks that we are perceiving. So what's a sample of the ELCA? We have 10,800 households represented nationally, and at the regional level, we also have representativeness. We have 6,000 urban households and 4,800 rural households. We have 5 regions in the urban areas, and they are all representative by area. One of them is the capital city, Bogota, and there are other 4 areas. In the urban sample, we use strata 1 to 4 out of 6 strata that are equal. So this is a survey that is concentrated on the only on the of the rich have this. Rural areas have 4 regions, and these 4 regions are also representative. And we are targeting the special emphasis of this survey is to target early childhood. And we are following this cohort that in 2010 they had between 0 and 10 years old. They were 0 and 10 years old. The children that we are following are 8,600 children under 10, as I told you, and they are half in urban areas, half in rural areas. So for the follow-up in 2013 and 2016, we are going to target these type of respondents: the household head, the partner, the head of the household, sons, stepsons, grandchildren, and grandgrandchildren. We find this type of composition within the households in Colombia. And the kids that we're going to follow, as I was telling you. So we have a panel, but this panel is following a cohort over time. A cohort of in 2013, they had from 3 to 13 years old, and in 2016, they're going to have between 6 and 16 years. We are also following migrants that move to municipalities close to the original places. And the attrition in 2013 was 5.8% of the sample. I'm going to show you which were the strategies to try to keep attrition low between 2010 and 2013. So these are the municipalities. This is a map of Colombia. These are the municipalities that we sampled in 2010. So there are 80 municipalities, 550 villages. And in 2013, given the migration, the inside migration that we had, the internal migration, we had 171 municipalities. Almost double. So how are the samples distributed? Urban areas, rural areas, 2010. We missed very little, a small proportion of households, 171 and 163 urban and rural respectively. And we had movements within urban and rural areas. So 276 households from rural areas moved to urban, and 46 households from urban moved to rural. So these people are in the urban sample, this green small one. But in the second round, we're gonna include them in the urban questionnaire, even though they were from the rural sample. We have separate questionnaires for both areas, given the type of questions that we are asking in places. Like, for example, agricultural production in rural areas. So we have this 10,800 households. I'm taking out the 800, but they're important. Then in 2013, we had 94% of the sample. That was sorry for the first follow-up. We're going to go next year for the 2016. And given that we are following a cohort that are 0 to 10, and we had some tests, cognitive and social emotional tests for these children from 0 to 5 in 2010, then we're going to follow them. We follow them in their youth. Now next year we're going to follow them in their adolescence, and then in the young adulthood. And we're going to look at differences between these kids, and with these tests we're going to compare, we're going to correlate things with risky behaviors, teenage pregnancy, or type of things that happen in this stage of life, and labor markets for the young adults. So which are the innovations or the value added of the survey that we have? We have child development measured by cognitive tests, social emotional tests, and anthropometrics, which is similar to the Chilean case. We check on we ask for strategies of households to mitigate the impact of shocks of armed conflict and natural disasters. We have very detailed data on land tenure and informality of property rights. And we have agricultural production in rural areas and what are the conflict dynamics. And we have a community questionnaire which is asked to the leader of the communities, and we find out things about institutional services, infrastructure, public services, and shocks and violence. Other information that we collect are financial and insurance markets, labor market histories. We have modules of time use. We find out economic conditions in terms of consumption and income, housing conditions, agricultural production, health and education in general. We have modules for those aspects. We found out about transfers. We check for transfer from the government and transfers, informal transfers, just in the community. Access to social programs and participation in organizations and social networks. Political participation and preferences. We have a module of political preferences. We have ethnicity and skin color, is measured in the survey. And we have the household geocode located with GPS, and we could link information with that data. So first we're going to look at the households, poverty, and shock and concept. So what happened in the data? What can I show you about these three topics? So first of all, we're going to see how households are transforming over time. So in these 3 years, 56.9% of households in urban areas changed their composition. In urban areas, 62% of them changed the composition. So it's important to try to find out how there's a difference between the composition over time. If a person from the original household goes to another household, they're going to start following that household. So what's the type of migration that they are having? So in urban areas, 81% of them are staying in the same municipality, and in rural areas, 25% of them are staying in the same municipality. So rural areas are having migration which is on a much farther distance, let's say. What are the changes in income due to migration? So if households that are migrating to urban areas are having an increase in 95%, they're having a 95% higher income than what they had before. And if they are moving into rural areas, they're having negative shocks in terms of their income. Of course, these all are correlations, and I'm not saying anything that's causal. In terms of the poverty dynamics, it's very interesting because we see here that poverty decreased over this period of time. So 22% of the people that were in poverty stayed in poverty. 21.5% of them went out of poverty, and 24% in urban areas, and 7.5% fall into poverty. They were not poor, and they started being poor. So this is a nice thing about longitudinal studies. Like if you had a cross sections, you would just understand what happened between the two periods of time. But if you have longitudinal data, then you know which are the transitions of exactly one household in terms of entering and leaving. Now, in terms of shocks, the shocks that we are measuring, we asked the households if they had a high or medium or low shock in terms of employment, health, family, housing assets, a disaster, natural disasters. We had a big natural disaster in Colombia in the middle of the two surveys, which was flooding of many areas. So this was good to study with the information that we collected in the follow-up, production and violence. So these are the shocks that the families received. Mainly one of the big shocks that the families are receiving are in terms of labor, employment, and here production, because it's rural area. And the second one is health shocks. Now I'm gonna correlate the impact of a violent shock or the different shocks with social-emotional development of kids. So if they had a shock, is the blue dark line. So the only shock that is showing big differences in terms of social-emotional development is having a violent shock. The difference in the two bars are showing that. What about nutritional status, nutritional development? If you had a violent shock or if you have a natural disaster, you're gonna have big differences in terms of the nutritional status. We can also look at labor market transitions, and we have informal occupation, formal occupation. So as you see, the yellow one is the yellow one in the next. So this is 2010, this is 2013. So you see some kind of inertia, but you also see movements over the occupation of people. For example, unemployed are the ones who are changing the most. They stayed unemployed. 18% of them stayed unemployed in 2013. But in fact, as you can see here, the informal sector opens to them as a way to get to earn income. What about children and youth? So ELCA has these 8,700 children that we are following. We have socioeconomic household information. We have anthropometrics, a cognitive test, so we have the Peabody test, the GM survey. We did in 2013 the ASQ test for kids between 0 and 5, and we're going to do the SDQ for 2016. We're changing just because we can follow like a bigger cohort with that test. But we can talk about that if that's a mistake that we're going to be doing or not. We have also pregnancy information for each kid. We have children's education, health information, vaccination. We have child care givers information and parental practices. So in general, in these 2 years, we've seen a reduction in malnutrition in urban areas and in rural areas in general. What about the vocabulary test, the PPVT? So the results in 2010 are similar to what we were seeing also in Chile. This is the blue line is the 25% poorer, and this is the least poorer, the 25% least poorer. And we see a gap. Like there, the poorer are just below the rich ones. In 2013, this continues. As I told you, we are following the cohort. So here is between when they were 3 to 5, and here we are following the same cohort. So this is for an older age. So the gap persists over time. In terms of rural and urban areas, I think this is striking and is very important for public policy because we see that in urban areas the gap is also appearing with a great margin. So this is showing the inequalities that we have in terms of regions. Urban areas are doing much better in the test than rural areas, and this persists over time as well. This is a nice linkage between the information in 2010 and 2013 about malnutrition and what's the result in verbal ability in 2013. So if you had if kids that didn't have malnutrition are the blue lines, the blue dark lines. So kids that did not have malnutrition have higher PPVT scores compared to the kids that have malnutrition. In terms of overage at school, so we see in 2010 that given that we're looking at kids from 5 to 9, which is primary, we have almost full coverage in primary. So the percentage of overage is similar. But if you look at kids 7 to 13, you can see that the overage and dropouts are very high in the poorest quintile. So this is the highest quintile, middle, and poorest quintile. So this is important in terms of inequality. Drop out of school. If you had a shock, a health shock, or an employment shock, it's more probable that you're going to be dropping out of school for more more than 2 consecutive months. And in terms of rural development, ELCA is ideal instrument to study the social well-being of rural areas. We have information on changes in land ownership and land use. Land ownership is a big deal in Colombia, as I'm going to show you on the slide. Access to social programs also in rural areas are important because it's the most difficult place to get to move people to access to the programs. We have information on political participation and electoral behaviors, and this is important because many of the social programs also move with have some relationship with participation, political participation. Security perception, we're also asking about that information, and many of the regions that we are surveying had or have been occupied by guerrilla groups in our conflict. So in terms of land ownership, what I want to show you from this slide is that 30% of the land in Colombia, or the households that we are surveying, have informal property. 25% of them do not own the land, but they are working on that land. And about 40% of them are land owners. As you can see, these are two pictures without checking following the same household, but we see that they are transitioned in terms of land owning. Here is the dynamic using the panel data. So 9.1% of households owned land in that period of time, like they bought land. 10% of them formalized their property rights, which is a good thing. 2.6 sold land, and 2.4 lost their land. This slide is showing the different types of activities, of agricultural activities that households are doing depending on the number of years that they have suffered from conflict. So in general, you'll see like if they have been suffering high levels of conflict, they just have grass in their land pasture, or they have unexploited land. So here, as you can see, if for example, households in regions where armed groups have been present for 4 years, they have 7.4 percentage points more land unexploited. So they might feel they need to, or they have to go over to migrate as forced migrants. Okay, so here I'm going to talk about the strategies that we use to reduce attrition. So for the first wave, we were sending the results of the cognitive and nutritional development tests for the kids. So they were sent to the households. We asked for contact information from friends and from relatives, and we were giving a small gift, a calling card to the households. After that first wave, we started having a call center in the university with permanent contact with the households to update location and information of the households that we were going to follow in 2013. We also had some SMS messages that were sent on their birthdays, on Christmas, and Father's Day, and we had some raffles. So we had a raffle of 5 bathroom kits, for 10,000 pounds. And we had a raffle of 2 monthly gifts to be redeemed in a big national supermarket. The price was $275 twice per month. So this engaged them into the survey. What difficulties we found in the field? So the questionnaire, the length of the questionnaire. In urban areas, it's 3.2 hours plus the test. In rural areas, we have 5 hours plus the tests. Rejection, especially in urban areas, and more for higher strata. They don't want to spend too much time on the survey, and people they don't see the benefit of the survey. So So we have a publication, and the publication is sent to the households which have higher socioeconomic status or education in order for them to read them. And in 2016, we're gonna deliver a flyer, but we don't know how to show them how is it important, like how it's important to participate. Because they say you're gonna keep me for 3 hours every 3 years. What am I gonna get of this, or what is the country going to get of this? Some other things that happen, like the surveyors asked to the households in 2010, what do you want to get as gifts in 2013? And they were expecting those gifts. They were asking for plasma TVs, and they were asking in terms of of the results of the test of the children, many of them didn't understand the results, and they were saying, "But tell me what is this? Don't tell me a paper. Tell me what do I have to do." And the community leaders that were surveying the community questionnaire, they thought that the university would solve their problems. They tried to find the solutions from the government for these problems that they have. Okay, so this is our webpage. There's the link, encuestalongitudinal.uniantes.edu.com. The data is publicly available. The first round of the data was publicly available 1 year later. So we are releasing the data 1 year after it is collected. But by now you have just the 2 rounds of the survey, which are publicly available for you to use. And there we have documents, we have the questionnaires, we have the different publications that have been done, pictures, more videos. Okay,